Hey guys, we're going to jump right into it here. This is a follow-up video to my last video. I've completed a pretty major milestone. And ta-da! I was able to do a Nightmare 100 today. Yay! Necros are on the board. It's possible. Nightmare 100 complete! I wanted to make a quick video as a follow-up to my previous video to show you the changes I made just for this outcome. Basically, the video that I showed previously was a speedball version of the build, which means it was primarily, which by the way, the new official term that I've worked out with Ghazzy is explosive shadow mist, because that's more PC and content creator friendly. So explosive shadow mist is the new unofficial name for this build. Anyhow, I had to make changes to the build because the previous build was for speed, whereas this is for survivability. And I wanted to show you guys really quick those changes that I made so that you guys better understand what to do if you're struggling with survivability in the 80 plus nightmare keys. First of all, I put disobedience on my neck. Obviously, Blighted is a major source of damage, but at the end game in Nightmare 100, it's not about damage. It's about survivability. And this right here, disobedience is already the strongest defensive aspect in the game for every class, probably. When it's on your neck, it's that much better. With Elixir and this and everything else, I was pumping out 14,000 armor, which helps because in the high keys, you basically need it. Because even with 14,000 armor, they're still chunking you for your life. There's really no other way to offset the ridiculous amounts of armor penetration that level 154 enemies have over you. Keep in mind, in Nightmare 100, the enemies are 54 levels higher than you, which means your armor value gets absolutely annihilated. So even though it seems high, stuff like this and elixirs, heavy, the iron skin elixirs and all this other stuff, this is how you jam this up so high that it becomes possible. Now, will Blizzard nerf armor? Will Blizzard buff resistances? Will Blizzard nerf disobedience? Look, I have no idea. I assume at this point everything in this game that we consider to be really, really powerful, they'll probably nerf it one way or the other based on what we've already seen. But at the time of this video, this makes the most sense to do. In addition to that, it freed up a defensive slot because I originally had disobedience on my chest. So instead, now chest becomes might. Might is a very strong skill for us. We use it with Reap, and what's cool about it is not only is it good in the middle of fights when you're randomly casting Reap just to get the innate 15% bonus that it already gives you, you also get to use this as an engagement skill. So one thing you're going to find when you're doing high keys is it's very, very easy to die as you're engaging enemies because Necro is a bit of a setup class, both offensively and defensively. And what I mean by that is, sure, once we have all our stuff applied, we're probably the tankiest class in the game. I'm just going to say it. I honestly believe it. I can face tank things in Nightmare 100 more or less to a certain degree when everything is set up. And those things are, I need to have Bone Storm going with Shielding Storm. I need to have Reap with Might. I need to have Decrepify on my enemies. I need to have Shadow Pools down so they're taking decreased reduction from enemies over time. I need to group them up using Tendrils so that I can get the damage reduction from close while I'm trying to use Poison Mist or Blood Mist to pop the corpses. All of these things add up and this symphony of destruction that create this very, very, very high DR for us to allow us to live in these conditions. However, when you're engaging enemies, a lot of these things don't exist. You don't have poison pools down. They're not standing in it. They're not getting the damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow over time. They're not potentially giving you shielding yet because even though you have Bone Storm going, you need to be in melee range to get that barrier from the Bone Storm. Just because you have it going doesn't necessarily mean that it's doing anything for you yet. You need to build that shield. All of these things need to be in place, and until they're in place, we die in one hit in Nightmare 100. That's where the beauty of Might and Reap come into play, because in order to use this, it just says basic skills granted. It doesn't require you to hit an enemy. So one thing you want to keep in mind when you're running around in high keys, if you're using Might, is you can swing your Reap as a pre-engagement device so that 20% bonus is already going before you engage. You also want to make sure you are casting Decrepify almost immediately to guarantee that you are lowering their damage as you engage. These two things have to happen or you're going to get just absolutely smeared the second you try to go up against these enemies. But Once all these things are ticking, you're going to find that you have a very comfortable amount of DR. Now, another question people are going to ask, okay, well, how's the gear? Well, it's pretty fucking good. My headpiece, as I mentioned in my previous video, has lucky hit chance while you're barriered. This is great for necros. We can't naturally roll it as a necro, but you can either use Diablo trading markets to find a sorceress willing to trade you the item like I did here, got this at a fantastic price, or you can roll it yourself by creating a sorceress ult and then putting the item in your stash, taking that item out with your sorceress, and then going to the reroller to roll it. The only flaw with this piece, obviously, is the total armor is not very high. But all said, this, as far as a lucky barrier hit helm goes, this was the best I was able to find, and I'm using it for now. It got the job done. Chest I showed in my last video. This is an absolute banger. I don't know if and when I'll ever replace this or upgrade this. It rolled so friggin' well. It's going to be tough. It's a great piece. 2 perfect DRs of 2 of my favorite DRs with the damage reduction and total armor just a smidge below perfect. That piece is nuts. Howl from below, your standard howl from below. Not the best roll, but it gets the job done. 38% is above average. The lucky hit chance isn't the worst. The stun rolled perfect. The fear, kind of a cuck when you're fighting enemies, but it's great against bosses. It helps with stagger bar. I'm okay with it. Pants, I upgraded these since the last video. These things are a friggin' banger now. Has the corpse explosion points for damage, and then it rolled a very good reduction from close, a very good reduction damaged all, and this time I upgraded the damage reduction from enemies. Now, this doesn't have armor percent, it's true, but I got the other 3 pieces to be better than the last pants I had in my previous video. It was only 13% damage reduction from enemies over shadow over time, and it didn't have the close damage. It had armor instead. I traded off the armor percent to get the effective damage over time, another 7% there, in addition to the 22.3% from the close enemies. So yes, I lose a little bit of armor, and I know armor is busted, but that being said, these pieces gave me overall total percentage that added up to be more than the armor I was losing from the other thing. It ended up being okay. These boosts, slight upgrade. Do I need the movement speed for seconds after killing elite? No, I don't. Is it easy to farm really good roll boots like this? Multiple, of this quality to have for both my speed build and my push build? Not really. If I was going to replace this boot with anything, it would either be a boot that rolls dexterity instead, which I'll get to in a second, or there are the unique sever boots. So this gets brought up a lot, and people ask me if I'm aware of this, and believe me, I am very aware of this. I just do not have a good pair. The unique boots that give a plus to sever, they don't have movement speed, which sucks. So if that ever gets changed, where we're allowed to reroll unique items, I will be using the sever boots way more frequently. Right now, it needs to have a really good roll in the secondaries, because it can roll lucky hit with shadow damage, and it can also roll this stat that the pants have right here, the damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time. You will notice both of these on the boots, the Sever Unique, which makes it a very powerful piece because the secondary on boots aren't all that exciting normally. By having those 2 stats on the Sever boots, they actually make them one of the better defensive pieces, and it would put the DR and the lucky hit through the roof even more than this build already is. They are very strong, and if I found an actual roll where those 2 stats were rolled almost perfect, I would be using them in my push build and sacrificing the movement speed. That being said, my neck was swapped where it has damage reduction instead of movement speed. So what would probably end up happening here is if I was using the Sever boots, I would consider maybe using my movement speed neck instead of this neck, or I would change the ranks of the terror passive into trying to be movement speed instead, because at the end of the day, while you don't need all the movement speed in a push build, you do need some movement speed because you're going to be doing a lot of dodging. You're going to be running around avoiding these enemies and their affixes, because the name of the game is dodge everything. Just because you can face tank a lot of the basic melee hits doesn't mean you're going to be surviving a lot of the special attacks. Things like the flyer plumes that they shoot out at their feet, or the lightning pillars, or all these other affixes that they get, these will still one-shot you in a Nightmare 100, even with all of these defenses. And honestly, as a player, I don't hate it. I think the fire ground thing is a little overtuned, and it's annoying for us. But at the end of the day, if you're telling me that in order to do the highest, toughest content, I have to dodge everything and be a good player, so to speak, and use good micro and not get hit by things, I'm fine with that. I'm not fine with a quill boar shooting me with a porcupine quill and blowing me up and killing me in one shot. That part sucks, and that's what this build solves. You're not going to die when you're in your super mode to a random skeleton that takes one swing of his sword at you. You will still die to a mortar shell if you don't dodge it, which, you know, that's fine, but the basic enemies are not going to one-shot you. My Black River is still the dog shit Black River I had in my last video. Absolute bottom feeder percentage roll in the special effect, and it's only a 797. Let's not talk about that. My rings are the same rings. They're fine. I mean, I like Lucky Hit, Max Life, Vulnerable, and then a Slot Bucket, so this one's fine. And then this one doesn't have Vulnerable, so if I were to find one on par with this, it would be even more vulnerable damage, which would make me even, you know, that much stronger or whatever. But I just haven't found better. I don't know. Rings are not. As a Necro, we actually roll the worst rings. It is hard for us to get well-rolled rings because you may or may not be aware, we've been talking about this in other videos and other content, the number of secondary stats that Necros can roll on rings is much, much, much higher than every other class. And unfortunately, most of those stats don't matter to us. We want the basics like everybody else. We want Lucky Hit. We want maximum health. We want crit stuff. We want vulnerable damage. We want all these generic stats that are available for all classes. Unfortunately, our class rolls a bunch of dog shit that we don't care about. So we don't see those good rings as often as other classes. If you're a Necro watching this and you're trying to get good rings, I'm going to tell you, there's a very strong Diablo trading market out there in Discord. You should join it. You should monitor it. A lot of these upgrades that I've been getting have come from that market. It's a very powerful source for gearing. I bought this helmet, 5 million gold. These pants, 10 million gold. It's unbelievable how cheap you can buy this stuff, and you can get that kind of gold from just a couple hours of farming. It's really not that bad. Strongly advise joining that market, especially if you're this build, because there's a lot of weird niche shit that this build uses that others, classes, and specs don't, so we can scoop up those items a little cheaper than the rest. As far as the offhand goes, I was switching, so I said I'd mention the breakpoints earlier. Right now I'm at 447 dex, and that's primarily because of this. If I switch to this offhand, I go down to 393. You have to remember your breakpoints on your Paragon boards. This right here, 450 willpower, 430 willpower, 450 dex, 440 dex, 450 willpower, 430 dex. So in order to hit those breakpoints in that final Paragon tree, I kind of have to have this. And it's really important because one of them is actually 100 bonus armor. So I try to make sure that I'm hitting these breakpoints when I'm doing it. I actually goofed. I forgot that this one was 450. I could have put another 5 dex from like a Paragon node in this to get the 25 damage to healthy. Not the end of the world. It's just slot bucket damage, whatever, right? But the point is that getting at least one piece of gear with dexterity rolled somewhere in there, unless you have a bunch of all stats, is probably going to help you a lot because unfortunately we have a lot of Paragon nodes that require dexterity. My best advice, the boots. If I had to put it anywhere, and I could put it anywhere, I would get rid of the movement speed for 4 seconds after killing an elite, and I would swap that for dexterity. But again, this is only for pushing. This is for the high content. This is not for speed clearing. This is for content where you're comfortable taking as long as you need to take to be able to complete a new milestone in your nightmare progression. That is a completely different play style than trying to burn through dungeons or, you know, whatever as fast as humanly possible for loot. When you're doing that, movement speed is king. The rest of it doesn't matter. You're not going to die. You'll be fine, and your damage is fine and whatever. The only other thing I'm going to note as more of a reminder than anything else is that I do carry these around as a hot switch. Basically, what ended up happening was by putting this on my neck, I needed to put Blighted somewhere, but I wasn't sure where to put it, and I didn't really want to swap anything. Now, I could have put it over Blood-Soaked. Honestly, this is probably where I should have put it, but I'm lazy, and I didn't want to put it on the ring, and I had my wand getting swapped in for Black River, so the logical conclusion was to put it on the wand, right? So I put it on my wand because I didn't have anything else to put it, and this was just the cleanest for my gear, so I could go back to farm build as soon as I was done this. This is just a pure personal thing. I didn't want to get rid of this on my ring because it would have meant I would have to re-enchant Blood Mist back on my ring, blah, blah, blah. Kind of a pain in the ass, even though this roll does kind of suck, so I probably should have done that anyway. But I put it on the wand and realized, oh, wait, that means that when I have it on the wand, or when I'm in Black River, I don't have it anymore. So then I put it on the offhand. So I have it on both the offhand and the wand. So when I'm in Black River, I have it on my offhand. And then when I'm in the wand, I have this offhand to switch back to the Shadowblight Key passive. Now, the Shadowblight Key passive is pretty good, but it's mostly better against single target in situations where you're not trying to kill things as fast as with Black River. When you're in big packs, Black River is king. It's not close. When you're fighting a couple targets in single target, you don't want Black River. This becomes good again. It's good because you're going to be doing more pools and less damage by using the wand, which means by logic you're going to be proccing this more often, so this becomes a highlight. You don't want Black River. When you're fighting bosses, or even mid-combat, when I get down to a single elite left, which happens a lot in Nightmare 100s because the elites have just ridiculous amounts of HP compared to the little lads, I will open up my inventory and hot switch my Black River from my wand and then continue combat. And then when I'm done, I'll just switch it back out. And I will do this all the time. In this particular instance, I had to do the 1-2 switch to make sure I was doing both. Actually, it'd be like that. I was doing the 1-2 switch when I would open it up. So I'd open up and go 1-2, and then boom, I'm back in. Obviously, this will be solved someday when they add hot switching or whatever. But this is entirely up to you, by the way. I'm just showing you what I used. You could move these pieces around wherever you want. You could put Bladed wherever you want. You could put Decay wherever you want. You know, these are not necessarily as important to what I believe to be necessary for Nightmare 100 as the key things, which are Disobedience on the neck and Might in the build somewhere. Could be on your legs. You could swap the Bone Storm for the chest or legs or whatever. But those are very, very, very important. And I think the boots here, Ghostwalker is probably the one piece that isn't mandatory in this build. But again, if I wanted to switch this to Blood Mist to move this off the helm and put that there, I could have done that. But I didn't want to get rid of a 25% Ghostwalker roll. This rolled so well. I've struggled to get a perfect Ghostwalker roll. So this all comes down to personal preference and how your gear looks. If you've got a dog shit Ghostwalker build that you don't care about replacing in the meantime, maybe you cover up Ghostwalker with something else. Maybe you use the Sever Boots. I don't know. This is just what I used in my own personal loadout because I really didn't want to erase that 25% Ghostwalker because I'm going to go right back to speed if I play some more. So this is what I used. And that pretty much covers it. I know this is a lot of rambling, but I get a lot of questions about it. I wanted to try to be as thorough as possible in talking about exactly what I used to do Nightmare 100. And again, at the time of this video, do I think they're going to nerf this spec? I don't really know. I honestly, I think so because they did everything in their power from the original beta to the second beta to nerf Blood Mist and its cooldown and its interaction and make it so that we couldn't be in this nearly as much. I feel like this build was their greatest nightmare in the Necro design. And when they realized it, they were like, oh no, we don't want them to do this. So we're going to change everything. And life finds a way. And here we are. We're back into a Blood Mist build. And they're going to see it and they're going to facepalm and they go, God damn it. We thought we made this go away. How did this come crawling back? But it is what it is. Is it powerful? Yes. Is it still, is it uber powerful? No. Here's the thing. And if Blizzard, you're watching this, getting ready to nerf this build, you have to understand, this took me all day. I didn't one-shot this Nightmare 100. I was going through dungeons like crazy trying to find one I could beat. I kept getting bad, rolls. I kept getting killed to stupid shit. It took me all day just to get the one. And I knew I could do it because when I was set up and when I was fighting the packs and everything was looking good, it was going well. And you're probably wondering, where's the footage? Here's the thing, guys. My computer, when I run OBS and I try recording and I'm playing the game, it gets a little choppy. It doesn't run as well for me. Sometimes my video card can lag. And honestly, again, I'm not a content creator. I didn't build this computer to be able to take videos and record my play and all this stuff. That's not the kind of content I'm playing. I wasn't even intending on making content. It's just I didn't expect this build to be ahead of the curve in the way that it was. And I'm making this content to show you guys because I realized very quickly that it was. I can't really record while I'm playing in high content like Nightmare 100 trying to get a very early completion in high-paced stuff because all it takes is that little tiny bit of SPS drop and lag or whatever, and boom, I'm dead. Like, I'm dodging stuff, I'm moving around, I'm timing cooldowns to the millisecond. Like, just because this build can do it, I'm going to tell you right now, there is a high skill cap. You're not going to just walk in there and do it. This isn't a face tank build in Nightmare 100. This isn't a build that just anybody can do it easily. You're going to have to put in the time. You're going to have to grind. You're going to have to go through a lot of keys to get it right, but it's possible. That's what matters most. You can do it. You're just going to have to put in the work and the timing and get it right. So if you have any other questions, feel free to post them in the comments. I'm pretty much just rambling now. I'm sorry. This is probably the last video I'm going to make for a while. Like I said, I never intended to make videos for this game. It's not why I play the game. I just play it for fun. Probably going to take a break until seasons at this point because the only other thing left, really, there's two things left in this game that I could pursue now that I've done the Nightmare 100 until the seasons. One of them is Uber Lilith. I'm going to be completely honest. This build, guys, not great for Uber Lilith. I've been practicing her. I can push her to pretty low in the main phase, but watching like Rax fight her with the Rogue, it really makes me wish we had better single target as a burst because It's rough. Like, we can do it. We can tank every attack she has, but those walls will still one-shot. When she fires the spike walls, if you get hit by one of those, you're dead. You can blood mist to dodge it, sure, but she's going to spam them a lot. And the biggest problem is she starts to cast the shadow pools a lot in her later phases, which means she's not on the ground and she's not taking ticking damage. It just takes a really long time to fight her in a fight that you kind of want to progress it as quickly as possible. If I could get to stage 2, I'm pretty confident she just dies. It's actually stage 1 that's the biggest problem because of the walls that one-shot. We can't handle that. But our tankiness would carry us through the second stage because while she does a lot of passive damage, she doesn't have nearly as many one-shot mechanics in that phase. So I will probably still try to knock that out because I'm bored and I have nothing else to worry about. Other than that, the only other thing would be trying to loot a Doombringer. So fun fact, when I designed this build before the game came out, I originally designed it around the idea of Doombringer being a goal that was achievable. I didn't realize that these legend uniques were going to be 1 in a million. I didn't realize that I would have to like sacrifice a cat and a child and half of an arm to some kind of demigod in order to make some unholy pact wish to have one of these drop for me. Like, I never imagined that was going to be the case. I thought I was going to be able to just get a Doombringer like anybody else. And if we had Doombringer in this spec with this class, you guys have no idea what powerful is in this game. You've seen nothing yet. Rogues talk about it being good in their class. There's a rogue out there that has one. Yeah, it's not even on the radar compared to what Necros, especially in this build, could do with that weapon. If you are a Necro or a player watching this video and you loot a Doombringer, if you're not a Necro, stop everything you're doing, go to level 1, start a Necromancer, level it up, play Necromancer with that weapon. It will change your life in Diablo 4. There is not, like, I'm telling you right now, a Necromancer with Doombringer is going to be the strongest character class combo whatever. It's not even close. You're going to be able to do so much shadow damage with its proc, and you're going to be proccing it 10 to 20 times a second. Rough Gorilla Math says it's probably going to crit for about 2 to 3 million, and you're going to be able to just spam it AoE in packs like you wouldn't believe. You can roll that thing up to a 25%. Our Decrepify is only a 15%. Our Gloves to Stun is only a 21 or 24%. Like, these proc all the time. That's going to proc even more. And it's going to be bananas. And it's going to give us single target damage, by the way, because 25% is as much as our Huge Flesh. You've seen how much when you're fighting bosses, if you're playing this build, you've seen how often Huge Flesh works on bosses, right? 24% lucky hit in this build. You get corpses all the fucking time again, a boss, right? Now imagine if that was a 2 or 3 million crit with Doombringer. You want to talk about single target damage? This build will have it all. It will juice the survivability. It will give us incredible, unprecedented AoE damage, and it will give us single target damage competitive with every other class in the game. So, to get a Doombringer, Godspeed. Lord help you. If the game decides to give me a Doombringer, it's like giving a James Bond villain a nuclear bomb. I'm going to do horrible things to this game with it. God only I wish it would give me a Doombringer. Trust me. But that's it. That's all I got. I'll see you guys in the seasons. Have fun. Echohack and Ghazzy and maybe Wowhead, they're contacting me, are now talking about this build. They're building this build on their streams. Check them out. I will link them in my comments. They're now very aware and making content about this build. I am sure they're going to add guides about this build to IcyVeins and Maxroll. There's going to be a lot of content coming for this build very soon. So yeah, look forward to that. If you haven't checked out the build, I made one dummy video previously talking about it. I know Echohack has already put out a video, and Ghazzy is working on it, gearing his character on his stream right now so that he can put out a very in-depth video about it. So look forward to that. If you have any questions, throw them in the comments. I'll keep an eye for a little while. I'll comment until I forget about it. And yeah, have fun, guys. Necro Bros for life. Good job to Blizzard for putting out such a fun game. I've had a blast with it. I'm looking forward to playing the seasons. It's been 2 weeks of grinding this in no life. I think I'm going to take a week off and go back to doing some real life stuff for a little while. So Godspeed, and I look forward to seeing you guys' tweaks to this build in the future. Have fun. See you later, guys.